I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, a good friend of mine. I have to, in all fairness, disclaim we talk about 4 or 5 times a week from North Carolina to Las Vegas, Nevada. Of course, it is Greg Mannarino of TradersChoice.net. Greg Mannarino, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thanks for having me back, Greg.
Uh,
Love your show. Love you. Love everything.
Well, love having you on. But you and Penta, I mean, you know of each other, but you don't talk to each other, but you sound eerily the same. And the reason why I'm having you back on is because this conflicting good news, which is there are some good news in the economy. And thank goodness for Donald Trump, we'd be in a full blown depression without Donald Trump. I firmly believe that. But we still have a lot of debt. I mean, Trump got saddled with $20 trillion in debt walking into office. And and surprise, there's another 21 trillion missing from DOD and HUD. So he's got a big hill to climb. But I want to talk about this yield curve inverting. It's down to we're down now just to 10 something, 10 point something on Friday, which you've been following this. You told me this about 60, and I started watching the yield curve, and it was for a long time that between the 10 and the 30 were 60 points, and then the 10 and the 30 were 50 basis points, a 0.5% between 10-year money and locking it up for 30 years, and 40 and 30 for a long time. And I mean, this has been going on for more than a year. Now we're in single digits. What's going on with what you see in the yield curve?
Where to begin, Greg? It's an incredible situation, and it's really happening right before our eyes. We're seeing a phenomenon here occur, which we have witnessed 2 times in the recent past. The last time was in 2008. The time before that, the dot-com bubble. And both of those previous times, the yield curve warning was being ignored, just like today. There's no difference here. And I think people are going to start to pay attention pretty soon when the mainstream is going to be forced to talk about this. Look, there's something going on here that is getting no attention. You did bring it up in your weekend wrap up after we spoke, and that is simply this, and it could not be more evident, at least to me, and I'm certain to your followers here. Everything is doing the polar opposite of what the Federal Reserve said would happen. The Federal Reserve has been talking about raising rates. The Federal Reserve has been talking about this rising rate environment. I mean, we've been hearing this from the mainstream channels now for years. Meanwhile, the opposite is happening. That is huge. What this should tell everyone listening is the Federal Reserve, this is proof 100% that the Fed has lost control of the markets. Again, everything is going completely the opposite. I mean, we're not talking about just a little bit. We're talking about absolutely opposite of what they have said. Now, this is a big tell. And look, we're being fed that, we're in this boom, everything is just great. Well, look, Greg, if that were a fact, we would not be seeing the yield curve doing what it is doing. It just wouldn't happen. And if you look at any economic boom throughout history, you did not have. There was nowhere to be found a flat yield curve. They all end up in a nice, healthy environment where we have a nice fat spread between the short end of the curve and the long end of the curve. Well, that's not happening here. So they can tell us, our politicians, they can tell us how everything is just fine and dandy. The yield curve is telling us a completely opposite story. And that's the one people need to be listening to, not what's coming out of anyone's mouth, but let's look at what's going on here right before our eyes. It's an amazing situation, Greg, here. And I think that very soon, probably sooner than we can imagine, we are going to be seeing a single-digit spread between the 10 and the 30, and then the mainstream channels will be forced to address this. Not just that, they're going to have to start to say, hold on a minute, what's going on here with the Federal Reserve? Weren't rates supposed to be rising? Well, how come they're Why are they dropping? Why are yields continuing to drop as well? Why are we seeing a rally here in the bond market and the stock market simultaneously? You got to be nuts, Greg. You know that. What entity, what person would want to hold government debt, public debt, in this situation here? Nobody would. So when you see what we're seeing now with rates dropping and pressure on yields, well, you know this is not an institution, a legitimate one. This is not the average guy or girl out here saying, oh, I got to own a debt unit right now. I'm not talking about corporate debt, different thing. We're talking about public government debt here, when the stock market is doing nothing but go up. And the reason for that, it's the environment we're in. There's nowhere to go. So we're seeing the bubble in the stock market hyperinflate on the back of the debt bubble, as we've been talking about for years, and this will correct to fair value no matter what they try to do. Every bubble rises to a level that cannot be sustained at one particular point. I wrote about this many years ago. And they're doing whatever they can to try to keep it propped up. But you have to understand as well that this is just a cycle of the market. Markets cycle like this. We've never seen this to this extreme before, but this will correct to fair value no matter what they try to do.
Could some of this money just be freaking out over the? I mean, Donald Trump just dropped a bomb. Oh, you know, we could put $500 billion of tariffs on China. China can only hit. We only did $130 billion in trade with China. We only sent out $130 billion. There's a $375 billion trade deficit. I don't know what China thinks they're, unless they start selling the treasury bonds that they own. I mean, wouldn't they just decapitate themselves right along with us if they do that, if this gets nasty? I mean, I guess my question would be, is money freaking out from Europe and the easy money policies there, from the emerging markets that are sucking and the dollar's rising, to this Chinese trade war that we have going on, this recent memo that China wants to build its military and win a war and overtake America? I mean, a lot of money is freaking out, and maybe they're rushing into the 10 and the 30-year bonds. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that we had to get to this point. This should have been addressed years ago. The markets, all of them, should have been allowed to do their one and only job, and that is to determine fair value. Unfortunately, President Trump has stepped on a landmine, meaning that he got this from the last administration as well, and the one before that, and the one before that. And it's gone so far right now, in my opinion, that there's no fixing this. There's no way to stop this whole thing to correct to fair value. And I understand what you're saying. You're absolutely right. But everything is so distorted and so twisted now that there is just no way out. Other than this thing correcting to fair value. That's all it's going to do. And people are going to freak out about it, and people are going to go nuts about it. But this is normal. And when you have distortions like this, again, when we have proof positive that the Federal Reserve or the world central banks have yet again, Greg, gotten it wrong. I mean, how many times have you heard me say that? Everyone knows I've been out here screaming that the Fed was going to get it wrong again. Well, they've gotten it wrong. I mean, the proof is because everything is going in the opposite direction of what they said it would. So, look, it's pretty simple to me. It really is. It's this environment we are in is not sustainable. All of these trade deficits and trade wars they're developing right now, all of this should have been addressed a long time ago. It's too late. It's too late for anything at this point here. It's just gotten beyond the ability for anyone who's trying to do the right thing to fix this. It can't happen. And this is a direct product.
But hold on.
Yeah.
But it can be fixed in, when you say correction to fair value, I mean, some of this debt's worthless. So isn't the debt just going to get written off? Isn't this just going to get, aren't they going to have to say, yeah, we'll never pay this back. That debt's gone. Like Puerto Rican debt, they're never paying that $74 billion that they had down there off. They just let that go. That went poof.
Well, here's the issue.
Right?
Here's the issue with that. And a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, the Federal Reserve, they could just hit a button and delete the debt. What these people are not understanding is their bills that are in their pockets right now are units of debt. If they delete the debt, or if they forgive the debt, that means whatever bills they have in their pocket also disappear. So you can't just say, okay, we have no more debt. What people don't get, I mean, at its most basic level here, is the cash that they have in their pocket or they believe is in their bank account, which is not really there because the fractional reserve system isn't even theirs. The cash is not theirs. It's owned by the issuing central bank and owed back to them, plus interest that they print out of thin air. These are debt units. So we want to forgive the debt. We'll be willing to be absolutely destitute and broke, because that's all part of the same thing. Not only that, all of this debt is linked to pension plans and all kinds of other liabilities. So again, they can't correct this. When we established this debt-based economic model, we literally signed our own death warrant. That's what we did. We allowed these world central banks to control every single aspect of our lives. That's it. They control the cash and they control the world. That's the truth. And when people get hip to that and they understand that, then they can sit back and say, whoa, what did we do? The only way to fix it is for this to correct to fair value. Yes, the debt is worthless. The cash is not backed by anything. The cash in your pocket, what is it backed by? A bankrupt government that is 20 plus trillion in debt at least. It's probably 10 times that if you add in unfunded liabilities and all the other nonsense connected to it here. So we're all broke. Well, I don't care what you think you may have or what wealth you, unless you own something outright, like a house or like your car or like a piece of gold or a piece of silver or something like that, you got nothing, zero. And they're controlling you. They're pulling the strings. So forget about there's no debt forgiveness, because then that you'll be gone. Whatever, you're not going to be able to keep the cash you might think you have because they're debt units. They got us all, Greg, right where they want us right now, unfortunately. And no amount of anything can stop what's coming. And again, it's a normal cycle of these markets. We get booms in the market and we get busts. We get booms and we get busts. Nothing like this before, because this has been nothing but propped up on the back of central banks that have lost control. They cannot control the debt markets right now. I mean, that's their sole job, is to manage debt. Well, guess what? They've lost control here, and all they can do is continue to print cash out of thin air, buy everything in sight to keep it propped up. Because if this were allowed to correct to fair value, does anyone believe that we would be seeing yields or interest rates that we are right now? Of course not. No one's smart enough. Nobody is smart enough to know right now what the actual cost of debt is, debt that can never be paid back. It would be, I couldn't even begin to speculate myself, but it wouldn't be anywhere near where we are.
But that is part of the. I mean, I'm listening to you talk, and that's part of the fix. Somebody's going to have to walk out someday and say, everybody giggles. I mean, I had Martin Armstrong on. He giggled. He said, everybody knows we're never paying this back. Somebody's going to have to come out one day, or the mass realization is going to happen to say, well, this debt's no good because it cannot be repaid. They can't even make the interest payments. I mean, that's what happened to I'm using Puerto Rico as an example. They could not make the interest payments, period, let alone pay back the principal. So isn't that what's going to, or if we print money, like Alan Greenspan said, we can print enough money to pay back anything. We'll never default, but the value, we can't guarantee the value of we can guarantee the digits. You can guarantee the dollars, but we can't guarantee the buying power of the dollars. I mean,
absolutely.
One way or the other, this is going to get, you said that this is going to be 10 times worse than the Great Depression. Explain why that's not just hyperbole or clickbait or whatever else. Explain why you said that. I agree with you, by the way.
Well, it couldn't be more simple. We have almost 10 times the population here in the United States than we had in 1929. So, I mean, if that doesn't explain at its most basic level, and let me tell you something else. People are not as civilized as they were back then. Back then, people banded together. Back then, people cared about each other. Today, Everyone's out for themselves, and they'll cut everyone else's throat just to pick up a dime off the street. This is the way it is. Our society has lost its way a long time ago. So now we're dealing with a population 10 times as great. I think it's about 10 times as great as it was back in 1929. And people are going to be, honestly, and this is what I'm saying, warring in the streets when they do not have access to their debt units, so they can, continue to spend them. I mean, that's what this is all about. It's a crazy. And back then we had real money. Right now we got nothing. We got unbacked liabilities being distributed by bankrupt governments around the world. That's what we have. What kind of a system is that? Who came up with that idea? Well, central banks did. That's their product. Their product is debt, period. They do not issue wealth. They issue debt. And that's what's keeping this entire thing suspended right now. And that's also what's keeping the stock market propped up. This is a mechanism. It's so simple to understand. If we all know you cannot be in a debt unit right now. You want to hold a bond, you got a government bond, you got to be nuts here in a market that continues to rise. Let's see, I'll buy a bond and I'll hold on to it for 30 years and I'll earn less than 3% when you could earn 3% in 5 minutes in the stock market here by buying a derivative. I mean, explain that one to me. So this is it's just twisted. There's nowhere to go. They're forcing people to put their cash into an inflated stock market. It's like a bomb that is waiting to go off. When it goes off, who knows? But I can tell you this, and this is what I want people to pay attention to if they get anything out of this video. We are on the threshold right now of a yield curve inversion. The spread between the 10 and the 30, as we are talking, is 10.4 basis points. We're getting close to single digits. I got laughed at, Greg, and I'm sure you did too, when we started talking about how the yield curve was going to eventually invert like 2 years ago. I had websites calling, oh, Greg Mannarino is insane. There is no way we're ever going to get even to the 20-point spread. A 20-point spread? We're down to a 10.4% point spread now. It's unbelievable. But anyway,
10 basis points, 1/10 of a percent.
10.4 basis points. So the issue is very simple. We're going to get an inversion. I think people need to be prepared for the inversion, and it could be days away. We could get into single digits within a day or two. Who knows? We could be, I meant to say weeks from an inversion. Now, that does not mean, and I want people to understand this because the people always twist my words, that does not mean when we get an inversion, that's it, this whole market's going to melt down at that particular time. If history is a guide here, if we just look at 2008 and we look at the dot-com bubble before that, there is a few month lag time. No, I'm not saying we're even going to get that lag time. It could happen tomorrow. When this is the scenario, Greg. It's very simple for people to understand. Those entities that are holding debt right now, that are holding that is literally in the negative if you factor in the rate of inflation, what they're earning, what they're paying out here. When they say, why am I holding this when the stock market keeps going up? Well, they're going to say, okay, I'm getting rid of all that debt. We're going to get a flurry of people dumping debt simultaneously. And what that's going to do, that's going to take these rates that are now being real low, and they're going to vault higher in a very short period of time, maybe in a matter of days. Now, don't listen to Greg Mannarino on this. This is Alan Greenspan, who I said it first before Greenspan did. He came out publicly, like, I don't know, last year, saying this is a scenario that has the potential to unwind. So what will that mean? Well, it means that the bond market is just trying to establish fair value, because we know that bond yields should be nowhere near they are. So when people start dumping that debt,
they should be higher.
Much, much higher. I mean, exponentially high. No one's smart enough to know what they actually would be. So what's going to end up happening is world central banks are going to try to stop that. They're going to try to stop the bleeding. How will they do that? They will print cash out of thin air and try to buy it all. What will that do? That will dilute the currency again. So because it's a unit of debt as well. So you got all this cash leading the bond market. You're going to have central banks doing whatever they can to at least attempt to stop the bleeding. That means they're going to be the buyer of last resort, get in here, try to buy everything that will melt the currency. Now, as rates spike like that, what will that do? Well, you're going to see a lot of pressure on the stock market. Rates will spike. The only reason why the market is where it is because rates are low. We'll get an opposite effect. So you got a massive sell-off potential here, and I mean massive, in the bond market, followed by a massive sell-off in the stock market. And all that cash, Greg, is simply going to go in other places. It's going to go into commodities, something I've been saying for the longest time here, suppressed assets. And then a lot of things are going to come to light here about the fakery, like the fakery we've seen over here in the COMEX with regard to deliverable assets. It's going to be an amazing kind of a situation, and it's all going to happen relatively around the same time here. And just like I've been saying for years, watch that bond market. It's going to tell you exactly what you need to do with your cash, and watch for that rapid sell-off to happen at one particular point here. We're going to get an inversion first. And then the potential is extremely high for that to reverse within a very, very short period of time.
You said that for years. Watch the bond market, and as we've watched the yield curve, flatten, come, the 10. Yeah, I mean, hello, Mr. Mannarino. You can get 10.85% on a 10-year bond, and now you can get for if you want to tie your money up for 30 years for another 30 years for a 30-year bond, we'll give you an extra 0.1%. How does that sound like a good deal for you, Mr. Mannarino? Man, that's what they're saying.
That's exactly what they're saying. I mean, I don't know. Look, this time here, when the yield curve inverts, and it's going to, there's just no doubt about it. We've never. This is literally like Star Trek, where no man or woman has gone before. We've never seen this before. We've never had so much debt on a global scale. So I think, and I would believe, again, the potential because of that. No one knows. Nobody knows how this can potentially unfold. But I can pretty much say with an almost 100% certainty, it's going to be exponentially worse than anyone can even probably imagine globally. This is going to be a global event, not one localized to any one country or to any one bank. The whole entire financial sector, which is the largest sector of this market, has the potential to implode. Not like last time, where they were able to stop the bleeding by all the bailouts, the TARP money. Can't happen this time. They can't stop it. We're going to get a credit freeze. People will not have access to their cash. You'll go to the bank. There's going to be bank runs here. The banks don't have your cash. It doesn't exist there. It exists on a digital screen, and that's it. So, I mean, look.
I mean, there's going to be massive people with that won't have money to buy food, won't be able to pay their bills, won't be able to meet their mortgages. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to get caught on the wrong side of this, that their income flow is going to stop. I mean, stop for a while.
It's going to, and then you know what else? You know what's going to happen at that point. But if this reaches that point, and let's just all hope that it does not. And Greg is completely wrong on this. You always got to look at, in my opinion, you always got to look at things from a worst case scenario, because if they don't get there, well, you're all better off. But if it does get there, at least you're prepared. But this isn't just going to end up as, and we can already see what's going on here. This is going to lead to another world war. At this, I mean, really, I mean, I don't know. I could put it in the terms, like I've said many times, biblical. It has the potential to be biblical. A worldwide event and a financial meltdown or a correction to fair value is really what it is. With another war. And unfortunately, we might be seeing some of the opening salvos already here. We already understand that governments around the world are building up their militaries just like we are. Countries around the world are doing that. Well, why is that happening? And why would they even want that to happen too? Understand this, and it's a pathetic set of dynamics that are in place. But war generates more cash than any other endeavor, a human endeavor on the planet Earth. So what will end up happening, unfortunately, is all this will clear out. We'll lose a large percent of the world's population through this financial correction and war. But it will rebuild at one point, but the world will not be what we're seeing now. It'll be a completely different place with a much smaller population, unfortunately.
You saw reports just on Friday, that China, it's a memo leaked out that they were building their military so they could win a war against the United States and overtake America. You hear Donald Trump in Montana talking about we're rebuilding the military. To your point, that big countries are spending a lot on their military. Russia's spending a lot on its military. They're also buying large amounts of gold, at least China, Russia. I can't imagine the U.S. is not trying to hoard gold. I can't imagine them not doing that secretly.
Well, that's been going on for years and years, and that's part of the reason why they're keeping the prices where they are. I mean, the richest people are buying gold. There's no doubt about it. 100%. Do you think the richest people? Well, first of all, the richest people right now are also in equities because they keep going to the moon. They're going to pull them out, their cash out of these markets, just like all these banks will. Or right at the right time. It's going to be kind of a coincidence. It's unbelievable, but seriously. And so they're hoarding hard assets. The only people that are not are the general population. Who are going to be blindsided just like they are every single time because they believe that this time is different, and it's never different. It's different this time because it's much worse. Much worse. I mean, I can't even get my head around it.
People should stock up on real stuff. I have people say, "What should the little guy do?" Gosh, just some people shouldn't buy. A friend of mine bought $4,000 worth of silver. Over time, it took him about a year and a half to do it. And I said, "Oh, hey, bravo, keep that. It's your core investment." Then he bought a house and he sold all of his silver. So why'd you sell all your silver? Well, that's all I had. I had to put it down a down payment. I'm thinking, that's a guy that shouldn't be holding precious metals. That's somebody. Some people shouldn't be holding it. If you can't hold it, and I mean hold it. But you should be buying tires for your car and 10 cases of water at Costco and fluff up your canned goods and you're buying real stuff. You won't hurt yourself buying real stuff, right? It'll cushion the pad of the there's going to be inflation and there's probably going to be mass shortages, right?
In a worst case scenario, absolutely there will be. Again, just add up what I just said here. When this does achieve a fair value, and that's all this market's going to do, because it's been distorted. I just can't imagine that world central banks don't already know exactly how this is going to play out.
I think they do.
I think that, yeah.
And I don't think they wanted Donald Trump in office. They wanted Hillary. They knew this was going to happen. They wanted Hillary.
Doesn't matter who's, in my opinion.
Oh no, I think we were much better off with Donald Trump in office. We the people will get a better deal. Hillary would sell Alaska. She would give away Hawaii. I mean,
maybe I'm sure that's true.
Trump's going to say to rich people, "You're going to take a hit. Sorry, you made a bad investment." The last time we bailed all the rich people out. They got all bailed out last time.
And don't be surprised to see the same thing happen again. It's always the rich people are smart enough to know what they need to do with their cash. It's the average guy and the average girl out here who has no clue.
I'm going to beg to differ on that. Because Warren Buffett, as smart as he is, required a government bailout not to be ruined. Remember, he loaned Goldman Sachs money and they got tied up with AIG. He also loaned money to GE and they got kicked out of the S&P, got kicked out of the Dow. He is an incompetent boob, in my opinion, that required a government bailout.
No, I'm sure.
The rich aren't always that smart. And I'm not arguing with you, but I'm saying the rich ain't that dang smart. They're connected.
Well, I'd be willing to bet that Warren Buffett has a couple of tractor trailers full of gold and silver. Probably. So he will do just fine from a financial standpoint, as well as a lot of people like him. He is not as stupid as he may sound when he says something like gold is a relic here that no one should be holding. When someone like that says that, you know that he's doing the polar opposite of that. He's not that stupid. None of them are. And it's governments as well. They're all hoarding this stuff. There's no way that they have stockpiles of paper, which doesn't exist anyway. And I urge everyone to do what I'm about to tell them. Go to the Federal Reserve's own website. Don't take my word for it. On this planet, there exists 1.6 trillion in actual printed cash. The rest of it exists in fantasy land on a digital screen. So all of you out here that don't like cryptocurrencies, well, you're already holding it, a digital currency. So understand, it doesn't even exist. It's not on the elemental chart. None of the cash exists. Only 1.6 trillion of it does. The rest of it, including all the debt, is just, not here. It's an amazing scenario that has the potential to unfold here, Greg.
And you would be a holder of cash as well. You would be a holder of
you got to hold some
actual
cash
that you wouldn't be in fantasy land.
Yeah, actual cash might actually hold some value for a little while in a worst case scenario until the world central banks decide to buy everything with printing more cash out of thin air. What I want people to think about, just real quick, when the Federal Reserve or any world central bank decides to just go on a printing binge or adding digits to a screen, how does those newly created bills get value? How do they have any value? I'll tell you, it's very simple. Every printed bill or every digital bill has to steal a little bit of purchasing power from every other existing bill in whatever form it might exist, whether it's a digital or it's a printed one. So this is how we get a currency devaluation. So understand, they can sit there and they can print and add digits to a screen, but what that will do is steal the purchasing power of every other existing bill in whatever form it might exist. So they can't stop, nothing can stop what is coming down the pike here. And going back to the yield curve, just real quick, because it's the biggest tell in my book that things are not as rosy as we're all meant to believe that they are. The mainstream is fist feeding us all this nonsense. Just look at the yield curve, people. That's all I'm telling you, because you would not see this if anything were real. This is a fake environment that they're trying to talk up. It's not going to work. That talk is going to turn into some kind of horrible mess for most people, unfortunately. And again, the writing is on the wall, Greg, in my opinion here, with regard to the market cycles. We're at a peak. I'm not saying the market is topped out here because there's nowhere else to go. Market is probably going higher. Just as I've been explaining to you since Donald Trump was elected, I said to you on your show or on the phone that it was a game changer. In fact,
you said it on the air.
I said it on the air.
You said, and I was kind of surprised. You went, I'm going to tell you something now, and you may be, counterintuitive, but or something like that. You said that Donald Trump's a game changer, and sure enough, boom, he sure was.
Yeah,
we'd be in a depression if it wasn't for him right now. We'd be in much worse. We're
well,
gonna fall from a higher level instead of.
I agree. Look, I'm glad we have. I think Hillary, and I'm going to take a lot of heat for this. I would have been a curse upon the world. Forget about this country. Okay, that's the truth here. But all that's going on here, unfortunately, is we're pushing off the inevitable. The inevitable is this will correct to fair value. That's it. There's no way out of it. And I think about it every day. What can they possibly do? I think, at least I would like to believe that maybe the Federal Reserve said, hey, they never have our interest in mind. But let's say in the abstract that the Federal Reserve did at one point say, hey, maybe if we stimulate like we've never stimulated before, maybe if we, initiate a bond buying program like the world has never seen, maybe it will pick up economic activity enough to stave off another massive meltdown. But all they did was make it worse. All the market was trying to do, and this is the shame of this whole thing, in 2008 was to correct to fair value. In other words, to get rid of the distortions that existed in the market at that time. But the Fed said, no, we have to reinflate these bubbles. So, and they did that on purpose. And this is what bothers me to the core of my being. When they went in there and they bought up all those mortgage-backed securities, they kicked everyone out of their house. Their plan was to inflate a new housing bubble on the back of the debt bubble, reinflate the stock market, So now those homes are worth something. Now their values have, my goodness, gone up hundreds of percent. So now they're going to start getting rid of those that these were known as toxic assets. Now they're not so toxic anymore. All those people got kicked out into the streets. I think they personally should be compensated, but they never will, because the regular guy or girl always gets squashed like a bug, and that's the same thing that's going to happen again here. There's no way to fix anything. Donald Trump is no savior of the world. Neither are any of these world leaders right now. We just have to all accept the fact that these distortions will correct, and there's no way to stop it.
Greg Mannarino, traderschoice.net. Greg Mannarino, thanks for coming in and throwing fastballs right over the plate, baby. Right over the plate. Thanks. My glove hand is hurting me now. So I think you were topping 105 there, right there, buddy. Thanks for coming on, and really, thanks. It was not only it was entertaining, but it was insightful. It was a good, sobering talk. I really appreciate it. Greg Mannarino, thank you for joining us. Greg Mannarino, traderschoice.net. I'll put up all the links. Thanks again, buddy.
I hope I'm wrong, Greg. You're welcome.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. Thanks again.
Bye.